not saying nothing.
Okay, Chair, the live feed on YouTube is now running, so you're okay to start the meeting.
Thank you very much, James. Welcome to this session, which is a remote meeting via Zoom and of the Northamptonshire Police Fire and Crime Panel, 2nd of October. The first item on the agenda is apologies for non-attendance, James. Sorry, I have muted everybody.
Through you, Chair, we have apologies for non-attendance from Councillor Kane of Corby Borough Council, Councillor Griffiths of the Borough Council of Welling Borough, and also Councillor Partridge Underwood, who's normally the substitute for Councillor Griffiths. Thank
you very much. Do we have any notifications or requests from members of the public to address the meeting?
There are none, Chair.
Okay. Now, declarations of members' interests, as you know, that you need to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest in terms of items on the agenda that are not already listed in your register of interests. Council members are subject to the requirements of their own authority's code of conduct. Independent members are subject to the host authority's code of conduct. Members are reminded that if they have a DPI or significant NSDI in a matter to be discussed, whether it's registered or not, they must not take part in the debate or vote on that matter and should remove themselves from the room irrespective of whether they are a member of the panel. Okay, on to Chair's announcements. Not much to say except that basically I have already muted everybody, but if members would please keep their microphones mute until they're going to speak. And I hope you all know how to use the raise hand function, which means that you need to click on participants and then you get a list of the participants on the right hand side and are able then to click raise hand. If in doubt, you can put your hand up physically, but it is almost, it is easier to see if you have a little blue hand. I'd also like to welcome Edwina Adafahini, I hope I said that right, who is Northamptonshire Council's new General Counsel Monitoring Officer to the meeting. And the next item is the confirmation hearing, Chief Fire Officer. And the first thing I'd like to do is welcome Darren Dovey. Welcome, Darren. And the next item, I've been asked if I could introduce members. Now, I know you've been to our meetings before, but possibly we haven't always introduced ourselves. So if we could go around, I'm Councillor Jill Mercer, the Chairman. Anita, could you introduce yourself, please? Mrs. Shields. You need to unmute, obviously, to do this bit.
Yes, my name is Anita Shields. I'm an independent member for the panel.
Okay, Pauline.
Yes, my name is Pauline Woodhouse and I'm an independent co-opted member of the panel.
Okay, Robert.
Robert Mahaffey, independent member of the panel.
Okay. Winston.
Thank you, Chair. Winston Strachan, councillor for the County Council Castle Division.
Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. I'm Councillor Ian Jelly and I represent Kettering Borough Council on the panel.
Okay. Richard.
Chair, Richard Orwell. I represent Daventry District on the panel. Thank you. Darren.
Janice.
Hi, Janice Duffy. I'm Borough Councillor for Talavera, which is in the Eastern District of Northampton. Thank you.
Don't think you need any introductions to Stephen Mould. Probably not Nicky Mardsek either. Andre.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to confirm that I'm Andre Gonzalez-Savage, the County Council responsible for actually for headquarters. So I'm really proud that fire and police are within my division for the County Council.
Very good. Ken?
Ken Pritchard, I'm the councillor for Old Stratford and a member of the South Northants District Council.
Okay. We've just already welcomed the monitoring officer. Would you like to speak, Edwina?
Thank you. I'm grateful. I'm Edwina DeFainty. I'm the new General Counsel and Monitoring Officer for Northamptonshire County Council.
Thank you. And Anna?
Hi, I'm from work, so I've got my mask on. I'm Cabinet Member of Community Engagement and Safety, Northampton Borough Council, and also Chairman of the Northampton Community Safety Partnership.
Thank you very much, everybody. I'd next like to ask James, our Secretariat Officer, to briefly outline the format of the hearing, and then members can ask any questions on that.
Thank you, Chairman. So this relates to the report at item 5A on the agenda. So hopefully that is set out sufficiently clearly. I'm happy to take any questions if not, but just to highlight a couple of salient points. So the requirement to carry out a confirmation hearing in relation to the proposed appointment of Chief Fire Officer is one of the panel's statutory functions. As a police, fire and crime panel, members will be familiar with basically the same process in relation to the appointment of a chief constable, and the legislative basis and the requirements as to the way the confirmation hearing is carried out is really a read across from the approach taken with chief constables for police, fire and crime commissioners, police, fire and crime panels and chief fire officers. So when the commissioner proposes to make an appointment to the position of chief fire officer, there's the requirement for the panel to hold a confirmation hearing, to ask questions of the candidates and to make a report and recommendation on the proposed appointment. So as set out in section 5 of the report, the focus of questions to the candidate is on their professional competence and personal independence. And it's worth emphasising that this isn't intended to be a rerun of the process followed by the commissioner to arrive at the proposed appointment. It's really intended to be a confirmation hearing, not a job interview in that respect. So the section 6 of the report then goes on to talk about the possible outcomes of the review, and in this case the outcomes are set out there at 6.2. So ultimately there is scope for the panel to make a recommendation on the proposed appointment, whether they recommend it or not. And in the case of a chief fire officer appointment, as with the chief constable appointment, the panel does ultimately have a power of veto, which would prohibit a commissioner from proceeding with that appointment. That having been said, it really should be emphasised that a recommendation not to appoint or a veto of a proposed appointment really should be an outcome that would only be used in exceptional circumstances, because essentially the panel would be saying it doesn't consider the candidate to be of a standard to be appointable, and indeed a decision by the panel to veto has to be made by a set number of panel members, which is in our case would be 2/3 of the full membership, which is at least 9 panel members So yeah, those powers are there, but the likelihood of you needing to use them should not be something that arises lightly. So in terms of the procedure today, members will have seen from the report, essentially it's a case of the panel asking questions of the candidates, and then once that process has been concluded and the candidates had the opportunity to revisit any answers or ask any questions of the panel they may have, the panel will then be asked to agree a resolution to go into private session to consider its conclusion on and the recommendation it wishes to include in its report to the Commissioner. That report will then be sent to the Commissioner by the end of the working day following the date of the confirmation hearing, and the panel and the Commissioner will then publish their respective reports. So the panel's report to the Commissioner and the Commissioner's response to the panel in coordination. So that all proceeds in a planned way and an appropriate agreed time. So as I say, Chairman, I hope that's a quick overview of the report. I hope the report itself is sufficiently clear, but I'm happy to take any questions that members may have.
Does any member have a question of James on that procedure? Not seeing any hands. Okay, thank you very much. Can I then hand over to Stephen Mould to introduce the proposed appointment?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can everyone hear me okay?
It's a little quiet.
Has that just changed it or made it?
That made it a little bit louder, I think. Yeah.
Sorry, was that? But I think you turned it off, Nick. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, very well.
Okay. So thank you, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The report sets out in front of you today commends Darren Dobie to you as my preferred candidate for re-employment to the role of Chief Fire Officer for Northamptonshire. I appreciate this is a highly unusual situation from a panel perspective, as you're being asked to confirm the employment of the current Chief Fire Officer. However, in order to abate his pension, it is technically necessary for him to retire and be re-employed on a new contract of employment. I'd also like to apologise for any confusion caused by the dates referred to in paragraph 4.1 of the report. It's always been my intention to bring a report to the panel to advise of his pension abatement, but we have not originally anticipated the need for a confirmation hearing. We subsequently received confirmation from both the Home Office and our legal team that a confirmation hearing was necessary. As a result, the dates will subsequently change, but the report was not updated. I've been in discussion with Darren about his desire to abate his pension. As you'll see from the report, there is precedent across fire authorities, including Northamptonshire Fire Rescue, for chief officers and firefighters to retire and be re-employed in order to abate their pension. It was of grave concern to me that I could potentially lose a senior officer at a time of national crisis, and so was minded to agree the request. Under normal circumstances, this process would require a break of service of a calendar month to ensure that pension entitlement could be abated without an impact on entitlement to lump sum payments or monthly payments. I was advised by my legal team and the monitoring officer that a clause putting pension abatement during COVID-19 pandemic on a statutory footing was added to the Finance Act 2020 on the 2nd of July of this year. This clause allows for a break in service to be reduced to a minimum where the only or main reason for employment was to respond to public health, social, economic, or other effects of COVID-19. So having reviewed the options available to me during the ongoing pandemic, I believe it is in the best interest of our county to abate the pension of the existing Chief Fire Officer for Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue. I also believe it's best for the county to minimise the break-in service required to do this under the provisions of the COVID-19 legislation, which will contribute to community safety in Northamptonshire. It has been determined that because it is necessary to issue the Chief Fire Officer with a new contract of employment, the panel are still required to confirm the appointment, and it is for that reason we are here today. I'm proposing, therefore, to reappoint the Chief Fire Officer on a new fixed-term contract for a period of 2 years. This will enable continuity of leadership during these unprecedented times and ensure that a full recruitment process for a successor can be carried out at an appropriate time when hopefully the country will be in a more stable situation. Under the leadership of the Chief Fire Officer, Darren Dovey, the service has seen significant performance improvements, made significant progress towards becoming a stable and balanced budget, investment in fleet, equipment, large-scale recruitment of new firefighters, and significantly improved response times. At this time, I believe it is vital that as the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, I do all I can to ensure consistency of leadership and the direction for the service, given the increasing likelihood of further restrictions and threat to life. The panel today has the important responsibility to review my proposed re-employment of Mr. Darren Dovey as Chief Fire Officer for Northamptonshire, and I'm sure you will undertake this significant duty with great vigour, insight, and I'm sure he's very happy to answer all the questions the panel may have. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I'd just like to say I think you've made a very clear case there, and I'm glad we have the monitoring officer and legal backup and advice on that. Does anyone wish to make any comment or on that? Okay. So I think with that, thank you very much, Stephen, and we're now on to the next stage where we would like to ask some questions. Darren, and I'm for the honour of the first question. What particularly attracts you to continuing the role of Chief Fire Officer of Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue Service?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I mean, from my perspective, it really isn't a case of wanting to retire at all. I mean, I've wanted to continue in the role. As you know, we're in the middle of the pandemic with rising sort of COVID numbers nationally. We've had quite a good response to the COVID-19 crisis, and we think we can continue to contribute towards the county's response to that. So in that sense, I would like to continue to lead the service's response to COVID-19. We think obviously there's not only going to be the short-term effect, but also the potential longer-term effect of COVID-19, both on the county and potentially on the service. So I think I'm in a good place to be able to lead the service through both those short-term and those medium-term effects. I think outside of COVID, obviously there's a large transformation programme that's ongoing between police and fire in terms of the new headquarters building at Derby Close, enabling services. We've recruited more people. We've got new vehicles, equipment and appliances coming into the service through next year. And so I very much feel that we're both in the middle of a pandemic and also right in the middle of a transformation process, effectively, that we're still doing between us and the police. It's only really the pension situation that's created this situation. So, I mean, so I've completed 33 years of service, and so this situation has been hanging over me really for the last 3 years. And I've continued to pay into a pension scheme for the last 3 years, effectively for no more benefit. But the time comes, both because of my age and also because of the way the pension scheme works, is that you come to a tipping point really where your pension starts to decrease effectively. So staying on any longer is starting to have will have a long-term financial impact effectively on both myself and my family going forward. So, and that's really the discussion that I've had with the Commissioner, which is I would like to continue to be the Chief Fire Officer, but the pension situation effectively means that this is the only way for me to be, to be able to do it in a way that allows me to be able to continue without that financial impact effectively. So, from my perspective, I want to continue to, to lead the service, having done so in moving from the county council to the commissioner, and with the plans that we've got in place, and also continue to lead us through, the pandemic in the very, very short term.
Thank you very much, Darren. Now, call on Pauline Woodhouse. Would you like to ask your question, please? You're muted at the moment.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Darren. I've got a rather long question, so bear with. What do you see as the main challenges currently facing Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue Service, and what will you take from your previous professional experience to enable you to address these challenges effectively?
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, I think the main things really are some of the things that still remain from the governance change. We're obviously on a much better financial footing than what we were previously when we were within the county council, but we've been able to stabilise the service financially, but there's still a big job to do with regard to a lot of the work, collaboration work we're doing with the police. So like I said, around the enabling services piece of work, around the estates work that we're doing. So not just the move into Derby Close, but the whole of, delivering on the whole of the estates programme. So I think across both police and fire, although policing isn't my responsibility, obviously we're very, very sort of joined up with regard to this, is making those services much more efficient going forward, because that allows us to deliver a much better service to the public if we're able to do that. So, over the last couple of years, we've been able to make some, quite vast improvements in our service delivery, so in the service we deliver to the public. And that's largely borne about by the financial stability that we've been able to put in place across the organisation since the governance change. And so, those challenges are still going to be about being able to continue to increase performance or have better performance, but still working within that really, really tight financial envelope. And so, with regard to my experience, obviously I've now been doing the job for the last 4.5 years. And so I was appointed originally to the Chief Fire Officer's job in July 2016. I took the job on temporarily in April 2016. I was appointed in July 2016. And that was at the time, obviously, when there was a lot of financial problems within the county council. So I've been able to lead the service through that, lead the service through the governance change, and to get us into the stable financial position that we're in now with better performance. And I think that experience, on top of the fact I've had 33 years of experience in the fire service across 3 different fire services. So I think that puts me in good stead to lead the service going forward. I think the other thing that's really, really important, and one thing I absolutely made sure that I did before I had this conversation with Stephen, and that was to have a discussion with the rest of my senior leadership team. I'm not a one-man band. I've got a good leadership team around me, and I had the conversation with them about their views about me continuing in the role for another 2 years, and they were all supportive of that. I think we all feel that collectively we've got a good management team. We're all joined up, we're all going in the same direction, and they certainly felt that me staying on for another couple of years was going to be the right thing for me to do, the right thing for the service to do from their perspective as well. So I wanted to make sure that this wasn't just myself making this decision, but that I'd taken the counsel of my other senior officers as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Darren. Councillor Strachan, Winston, would you like to ask a question, please?
Okay. Good afternoon, Darren. Nice to see you, mate. You look very well. Look, I picked this question because I really believe in what the Commissioner is doing, continuity. And I picked on this question because knowing you and knowing where we came from with the fire service and where we are at the moment, where you're taking it, I think continuity is important. And this is my question to you, which I think it's something that you would be well upfront with. Question goes on. Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue Service is in the process of improving its performance in key areas, taking into account the outcomes of previous inspections. What you do see as the key factors involved in sustaining improvement, and how will you contribute to this as our Chief Fire Officer?
Thank you, Councillor Strachan. So I was just listening because you've just broken up a little bit there, so there's a little bit of a delay at this end. So thanks for that. I mean, we've known each other for a long time, and so obviously well aware of the situation with regard to the service's journey over the last number of years. I think the key thing for us is I think we've been able to put the improvements we've put in place because we've got a good, strong structure in place. Myself and the Commissioner have a good relationship. We appreciate, the scrutiny arrangements and the accountability arrangements that are in place are really, really good. We've had an external inspection going back to 2018 that obviously pointed out some weaknesses in the service, that we're very, very well aware of. And I think what we've been able to do is put together a really good improvement plan that immediately sort of dealt with those initial more critical areas of the service that we needed to put right. And over the last couple of years, we've made a good job of progress on those. That's been confirmed by the inspectorate. And so for me now, now having got that core business up and running and going in the right direction, like I said, delivering on the enabling services and things like the estate strategy and the new headquarters building, for me, it's going to be about how we then start to reconnect with the county in a post-unitary environment. As well as the unitary environment kicks in, the partnership structures start to change. How does the Fire and Rescue Service then connect with other parts of the county, other organisations and partners in the county to better deliver some of those probably more preventative type services? I think we've got quite a good response service, but a lot of those preventative services are going to change. So for me, there's going to be a lot of emphasis on prevention and how we can partner with other organisations on that. There'll also be how we implement things that come out of the Grenfell Tower inquiry. So obviously, as the inquiry is ongoing, that is kicking out lots and lots of things for fire services, not just London Fire Brigade, but across the country to have to implement as well around fire safety. So again, that will be another large focus in the next couple of years in making sure that we're on top of that. We're implementing those things, both in terms of the safety of firefighters, but also because of for the safety of people that live in some of those buildings. And so there's some real key areas for me. So obviously continuing with that operational response improvements that we've done, delivering on the enabling services to make the service more efficient, and then delivering, those better prevention and protection areas across the county in partnership, in that sort of post-unitary environment, which I think gives everybody an opportunity, I think, to rethink how we've been doing things previously.
Yeah, thank you very much, Darren. I have full confidence in your judgment going forward, and I wish you all the success. Thank you again.
Thank you. Next question from Councillor Pritchard, please.
Thank you. Oh, good afternoon, Darren. I don't think we really know each other, unlike some of my colleagues, but I think it's quite a topical question that I'm going to ask you. And it's one of these things where the 2 years of your tenure, or whoever the applicant is from a 2-year perspective, it is incredibly important indeed. So if I just ask you, what do you see as the key factors in enabling Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue Service to operate as effectively as possible in the current financial environment, and also obviously the pandemic environment? And how do you see, and how would you address these issues?
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think a couple of things that I said previously, really. I think as a service, we're used to working in a really tight financial environment. We've been doing that for a lot of years now, to be quite honest with you. So I think for us, it's not going to be anything new. I think one of the main things for us is to try to target some of those investment opportunities where it's going to give us the biggest amount of opportunity. So we know, for example, that things like our ICT needs a bit of an overhaul, and we're looking to invest in that over the next couple of years, because that will make us a lot more efficient in the way that we do things, and that effectively frees up people's time to be able to get out there and do and deliver the things that we need to deliver. You know, like I said, you know, more preventative activity and stuff like that. So, you know, our key focus is really going to be around the enabling services piece of work, so sharing, you know, what's referred to as back office functions, not a term I particularly like, but I think, you know, people understand what we mean by that. Sharing those functions with the police, which will increase our capacity to be able to deliver on change. Overhauling our ICT to make us more efficient in the way that we do our business, the way that we do things on a day-to-day basis, and then focusing in on those key deliverables, those key delivery areas. And so, like I say, you know, people in the county expect us to deliver good operational response. And so, you know, we have fire engines available, we want to make sure we can get to incidents, you know, within our target times of 10 minutes. And so we absolutely want to make sure we continue to do that. And then, like I say, it's about then making sure that we target things like our prevention and protection work according to the risk. So those people at the highest risk in the county receive those services that they need. So, you know, and I think doing that within the financial envelope we've got is always going to be not a struggle. A struggle is the wrong word, I think. It's going to be challenging, but I think the relationship that we have with Stephen in the Commissioner's office and the rest of the office, and the fact we've now got a much bigger finance team shared across police and fire, I think allows us to be able to target that the money that we have got, and also build things like a capital plan like we have done to target investment in those areas that we most need. So, like I say, this absolutely isn't just about myself. This is about, you know, myself working in partnership with the Commissioner and also with policing to deliver these things across the board.
Just as a very quick supplementary, with regards to the existing pandemic situation, how are you going to cope with perhaps staff shortages and also some of the other pressures that you'll be asked to do in this environmental situation?
Yeah, well, obviously, we're sort of 6 months into the pandemic now, so we've been dealing with that all the way through. In fact, we've just undergone our HMIC FRS COVID inspection, actually, which we're just awaiting the outcome of. But, you know, first indications are that we've coped very, very well. So, I mean, I suppose the best way to answer the going forward bit is just to quickly run through some of the stuff that we've done over the last 6 months. And so we've been lucky that we've had very low absence rates. So we've been able to put in place all of the sort of COVID security measures and all the PPE that we need to put in place. And as a result of that, we've got very, very low absence numbers. I mean, as it currently stands, a rolling sort of 1% of the workforce is off at any one period of time. So that's 5 people across a total staffing of 550. At the height of the pandemic, we had 34 people off, which was 6% of the workforce. And, you know, we've got robust business continuity plans in place across the service, both organisational level and departmental level, to ensure that we can continue to deliver the core business, which we were very much able to do. On top of that, we were able to provide mortuary support to the 2 hospitals, the 2 LRFs. And so, for those that are not aware, it was firefighters that moved the deceased from the 2 mortuaries at the hospitals to the temporary mortuary at Wollaston. So we managed to do that over a 2-month period. We did 3,000 pharmacy deliveries to people who were shielding at home. So we supported community pharmacies in doing that. And we've been driving ambulances. And so that stopped at the end of July. But in fact, we've just had another request from East Midlands Ambulance to provide more drivers for them to drive ambulances. So we've managed to do all of that and maintain our statutory duty. In fact, you know, and things like response times have actually got better during that period of time. So, I mean, I think having all the processes in place, you know, and command structure in place means that we've been able to cope with that. And I've got, you know, absolute confidence that we can do that going forward. I mean, obviously, being a fire service, we do unfortunately on occasion, and we've had to deal in the past with things like industrial action. So, you know, we've had far greater staff shortages than what we've had through the COVID period, and we've still been able to deliver a key service, even when we've had, you know, half of the workforce effectively not at work. So, we've got all the plans in place, linked to all of the partnership plans as well. They've served us well over the next 6 months. I'm confident that they will serve us well going forward.
Thank you for a very comprehensive response.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Jelly.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, Darren. My question for you is, how will you, as Chief Fire Officer, seek to contribute to Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue Services involvement in partnership working, both with other emergency services and with partner organisations in other areas of activity?
Thanks for that. And I think that's a real sort of key question going forward, like I say, particularly as the county is sort of starting to change effectively. So, yeah, I mean, we've always been, high profile in terms of those partnership arrangements. So, the local resilience forum, for example, I've been a member of since I first come to Northamptonshire Fire in 2008, and will continue. In fact, we had meetings yesterday about reshaping that and what that looks like going forward and how that fits into the future Northants programme. We're very well represented on things like the safeguarding forums, on the prevention forums, community safety board, road safety partnerships. And again, we'll continue to do that to make sure that we're contributing in a way that against the risk in the county. I'm always really, really keen to make sure that we're not doing things in isolation. I mean, clearly, the fire service wants to deliver fire safety, wants to deliver road safety, but there's a real opportunity, and obviously myself and Stephen have spoken a lot about this, for us to be able to deliver over and above fire safety, particularly if we are dealing with the most vulnerable members of the community, because it's very, very rare that the people who are most vulnerable are only vulnerable from one thing. Those who are most vulnerable from fire will probably also be vulnerable from crime, for example, or maybe vulnerable from being socially isolated. So again, there's lots and lots of stuff that we can do in a much more joined up way across all of those agencies to be able to do that. And I'm really keen that, again, that we play a key part in that. And we continue to be, represented on the Community Safety Board, Health and Wellbeing Board, Local Resilience Board, all those key, all those key strategic boards. The other thing I'm really, really quite keen to do, though, and make sure, and one of the things that I've been talking quite a lot about as we go through the Future Northants programme is, what do those local delivery mechanisms look like? I mean, we can have as many strategic meetings as we like. Someone's going to go and do something at the end of it, if you like. You know what I mean? I'm really keen to make sure that a lot of that local delivery still takes place very, very locally. So I think the local partnership arrangements are really, really important. And I mean, the best example I can use is some of the work we've done over in Wellingborough, and also some of the work that we've done over at Daventry, where we've joined together with all of the community agencies to deliver across the piece. And I think the feedback that we've had from communities in those areas is that multi-agency partnership approach to problem solving has really, really worked. And so, as well as being involved in those key strategic boards, I'm really keen that all of our local stations are involved at local level, actually, delivering things, because that's what makes a difference to people at the end of the day, when they see sort of boots on the ground, as it were.
That's great. Thanks very much, Darren.
Thank you. Next, could I call on Councillor Andre Gonzalez-Savage to ask the next question? A bit of a thrown in at the deep end there.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. No problem. Darren, obviously good afternoon to you, and I'd like to thank you for your 33 years service so far to Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue and the communities of Northamptonshire. A question to you this afternoon is, can you give me an example of when you have devised and delivered an innovative solution to a significant problem or need, and how you sought to ensure that it was successfully carried out?
Sorry, Andre. Sorry, I couldn't see you, Andre. We were just trying to figure out how to get you up on the screen.
That's right.
Yeah, no, yeah. So I mean, innovation has always been a real sort of key part. And I know obviously you've been involved with us for a long period of time. So and as a service, we've led nationally on a number of different things. So you particularly are aware of Cobra and ultra high pressure that we've led on. Both nationally and actually internationally around that. But and I'm not claiming that for my innovation, because it wasn't. That was the innovation of the previous Chief Fire Officer, Martin Emerson. But I think what we've been able to do with things like that, so I'll give you an operational example and probably some, and something for the non-operational field as well, is we've been able to take that and deliver benefits, not only for things like firefighting, but the major thing that we've been able to do now by pushing and developing our firefighting tactics is deliver a method of firefighting that is safer for firefighters, that's more efficient in terms of the amount of time it takes us to do things, and also clearly has environmental benefits, but also has long-term benefits for firefighters. I mean, we're learning more and more, for example, about the issue of occupational cancer amongst the firefighting community as we're exposed to more and more carcinogenic material. And so the firefighting tactics we've been able to employ, together with things like new PPE that we've been able to employ, means that we can keep people safer. And as you're aware, we're the leading service in the country for that, and have been able to roll that out across lots of other services. And as a result of that, I would argue that our firefighting tactics are more advanced than anybody's. And just as a sort of, I suppose, to back that up, only this week we've had a delegation from London Fire Brigade here talking to us about that, about the implementation of that in London, on the back of their London Fire Brigade's Grenfell Tower Inquiry improvement plan, because they recognise that they're a long way behind the type of tactics that we use in Northamptonshire, both from an effectiveness and a safety perspective. So I think what we've been, what I've been able to do is take on the original innovation from Martin, and we've been able to push that on to mainstream that and really sort of push that to the max. I think the other thing we've been able to do in collaboration more with policing is join up more on command and control. So we know we've got things like a joint operations team, the only one in the country that does operational planning for both police and fire. And we've taken that out onto the incident ground then with the development of the joint command unit that I think some of you have already seen. So being able to have innovations like that, again, the only one in the country, that allows us to join up and implement something that's known as the JESIC principles, which is about interoperability with other services on the ground to ensure that we can effectively deal with incidents better, but also keep our people safer and be more effective for the public. So again, we're pushing those innovations all the time. And again, things like the Joint Command Unit about other benefits, because as we found out last week, Qatar, that are hosting the World Cup, have now ordered about 4 of these vehicles from the manufacturer based on exactly the same design that Northamptonshire Fire and Northamptonshire Police put together. So again, we are a relatively small service, but that means that we can be quite agile and quite nimble. And so, innovation is one of those things that we're able to do quite easily, to be honest with you, and get decisions made quickly on that. And I think that's one of the other advantages we've had with the governance changes. When we've got those innovations, we're able to get decisions on the support for those innovations really, really quickly. And I think that's had a real advantage as we move forward. And like I say, the main thing for me actually is, I'm always really clear with all of my people is that, I haven't got all the good ideas. Is that my job really is to create an environment in the service where people can bring forward innovations, because clearly across the whole of the service, lots of people have got lots of good ideas, and what we want is to create an environment where people are happy to come forward with those ideas. And luckily enough, they have, because lots of these things. I'll take the Joint Command Unit as an example. None of it's my idea per se. It's about bringing, creating an environment, and so people can feel that they can bring those things forward. And then it's my job to make sure that as a service we can implement them. And like I say, those two things around Cobra and the firefighting tactics and the Joint Command Unit are things that, from a Northamptonshire perspective, we can truly hold up and say, they're innovations, way beyond what other services are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Madam Chairman, just a point there to Darren, and obviously I'd like to encourage him to continue to develop and deliver successful innovation within the service, which I know is very important, not just to the personnel, the people, the best asset that we have, but obviously the communities around. So thank you, Darren. Appreciate that, and very best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I call on Councillor Janice Duffy to ask the next question, please?
Hello, Darren. It's quite an appropriate question with Unitary coming up. and it is Northamptonshire includes both urban and rural areas and has a growing population drawn from different backgrounds and community groups. Can you give a particular example of a piece of work that you have led that has involved successfully understanding and meeting different service needs within a geographical area? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and it's interesting in a county like Northamptonshire, because like you say, it is. I think sometimes people see, the word shire on the end of something and think that we're a rural county, but we do also suffer from some of the same urban issues that towns and bigger towns and cities do. And so it's really important to try to make sure. I mean, first of all, that we've got our key operational sort of service right, and we've had to do a lot of work to try to make sure that we retain the part-time service that largely services the rural parts of the community is up to speed effectively, so we can deliver a good operational service in all parts of the county. So we've worked really hard over the last couple of years to make sure that we can do that, and it's always an ongoing struggle to ensure that we can recruit and train and keep part-time firefighters engaged. But they're absolutely key to making sure that we can deliver in the whole of the county effectively. I think what that leads to then is a couple of the examples I gave earlier. So, some of the work that's gone on over in Wellingborough, some of the work that's gone on over in Daventry, and to be honest with you, as a chief fire officer, it's not so much that I end up delivering that work personally, because sitting at the top of the organisation, what I try to encourage are all of my people to engage regularly. So, like I said, we're sitting on all those sort of key strategic forums, whether that be me or whether my senior officers, and from that deriving, where we need to target some of that work. And I'm always really, really keen to make sure that we deliver some of that specific work in specific localities, because in general terms, that's where there are issues, and that's where we need to do some, that's where we need to target. And I know we've got another piece of work coming up in Wellingborough in conjunction with the Commissioner's Office in the not too distant future, targeting things like alleyways and stuff, like things that really make a difference to people's lives, because they become a blight and it becomes, an issue for things like crime and things like fire and stuff like that. So there's some of the things we want to continue to do. And there's lots of examples, all around the county of things that we've done that. The best example, I think, is the stuff that we've done in Daventry. Certainly, they won awards for the work that they've done over there, again, in that sort of multi-agency environment. So, I mean, I see my job as the Chief Fire Officer, not so much in sort of, I suppose, personally delivering that, but more about creating that environment, like I say, ensuring that we're engaged with in the right places to go out and deliver that stuff. Now, one of the key things, and I'll just come back to the retained part of service, if I can, is making sure that those people in the rural areas are not only available to do response, but also they're available to do prevention work, because people that live and serve in those communities know those communities best and therefore know what needs delivering. And so we're really keen to try to make sure that we can increase that capacity as we go. And the Commissioner in the budget this year has made money available for us to be able to do that. Obviously, COVID has stopped us from being able to recruit those people, but that's the plan going forward. So, for me, I've always been, what I would term as a service delivery guy, if you like. You know what I mean? Is it's great ensuring the service is doing what it's doing, but I'm really, really keen to make sure that we're delivering things on the ground.
Thank you very much. Can I now pass to Mr. Mahaffey to ask the next question?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Darren. My question is as follows. The Chief Fire Officer and the Commissioner must work as a team in the interests of Northamptonshire, but do you so in a way that recognises that the Chief Fire Officer is responsible for operational leadership of the Fire and Rescue Service and is held to account by the Commissioner for its effectiveness? How will you seek to maintain the right balance between these different factors in your working relationship with the Commissioner?
Thank you, Robert, and hi. Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think it's a really key question actually to the relationship, particularly in this governance model. So I think there's a number of things here. I mean, and actually, it's a real key question that's been discussed nationally within the fire sector around what's called the operational independence of the Chief Fire Officer. So I think first of all, it's having a common understanding between myself and the Commissioner what operational independence means, and I think we've come to a good understanding of that between the two of us around what operational independence means around that. And the Commissioner's really clear with me that it's my responsibility to run the service on a day-to-day basis to deliver the strategic objectives that he puts in place. Obviously, I then ask him for this is what I think the resources are going to be to be able to do that, and he then provides those resources. And we, there's the formal route for ensuring that happens, which I think is really important. So the monthly accountability boards that we then go to in order that I can then provide him with the information around how we're achieving those aims and objectives. And then there's the informal sort of way of doing that. Clearly, we have our one-to-ones as well, and we do. To be perfectly honest, we discuss some of this stuff sometimes around where is the line, where do I stop and the Commissioner start, and sometimes that's really clear, and sometimes it's a little bit grayer, to be honest with you. But I mean, what's really important is that the personal relationship between the two of us is good enough that we're able to have those discussions, and we need to continue to do that. I think the other thing is, obviously, people from the Commissioner's office, so in this case Paul Fell, will sit on some of our strategic management forums as well to ensure that he can provide advice and counsel from the Commissioner's office, and also be that conduit between ourselves and the Commissioner and the Commissioner's office. And outside of that sort of formal arrangement, I think, which is really useful. So, but I think we're both clear. And from my perspective, my professional integrity relies on the fact that if anything within the service operationally goes wrong, the buck stops here. The buck stops with me effectively where it's operational. And my expectation of the Commissioner is that he was able to provide the resources to allow me to be able to do that job, but not get involved in the running of the service. But at the same time, for him to ask me some pretty tough questions around why we're doing things in certain ways. And so I think the personal relationship is important, but it's also important to be able to have that sort of common understanding, which we do have. I do think, like I said at the start, it's an area nationally that I think will develop across the piece. And it's certainly one of the areas that the Inspectorate picked up in their State of Fire report that came out in January, and that was really that there should somewhere nationally be written down a definition of operational independence, which is probably in the same way as there is for Chief Constables, because the status of the Chief Fire Officer is slightly different from the Chief Constable. There is a slight difference in the way that operates, but what we've been able to do here, I think, is replicate that. And I know Stephen was really keen to say, although the legal status of the Chief Fire Officer and the Chief Constable is different, we want to replicate the relationship between the two. And so, that's how we've been able to sort of move forward with that. Sometimes that requires a tough conversation that we have to have in private, and that's fine. I think we know each other well enough now to be able to do that, and that will continue.
Thank you. I agree with you. It's almost an intrinsically grey area. But can just bring that to life for us? Can you give some examples of things the Commissioner, in theory, could do which would be crossing the line?
Yeah, so I mean, I think for effect, for example, the disposition of resources, for example. So I mean, during the COVID period, I'll give you a very live example. During the COVID period, if we've got less fire engines, because say we've got a job going on somewhere, and we've got fire engines somewhere. If the Commissioner rang me up and said, "Oh, I don't think we've got any fire engines over that part of the county. I think you better send some over there," then clearly we'd be saying, "Well, hang on a minute. Where the fire engines go is my responsibility and not his responsibility." So while he would have an interest, because and very much for me, wherever I think there's a political implication, would be where I pick up the phone and speak to him, because although it's me doing it, I would be saying to him, "Look, I'm just making you aware this is going on at the moment, and it could mean this. You may get a question around X, Y, or Z effectively. I mean, no, it's me. I'm dealing with it, but there may be a question that comes, and so I would, you know, give him that. Like I say, it is an intrinsically grey area, and I you know, say to Stephen, well, you know, that's where my 33 years worth of experience comes in effectively. You know what I mean? Because sometimes what would appear to be the case, also it isn't always the case. It's usually a very good reason, you know, sitting behind things for doing things. So, and my job's very much to be able to explain that. So, yeah, you know, things like the disposition of resources you know, is very much down to us, and you know, not that I've had to do that, but that would be an example where I think we would be saying to the commissioner, well, look, you know, leave that to us, and we'll make sure that you know, we'll keep you informed of what we're doing, but decision making sits with us.
That's fine, Darren. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Auger.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Darren. Darren, you know, 33 years in the job, and moving on a little bit from Andre's comments about innovation. Have you still got it? Have you still got that? And I use these words advisedly, fire in your belly, not only to keep us going over the next couple of years, but also prepare us for future innovation, future development and transformation of the fire service. What we don't want is you to tread water. Can you guarantee us that it's you've still got it, mate? It's still all there?
Yeah, thank you, Richard. It's a really good question, and actually, it was actually the first thing that Stephen, you know, asked me, and the thing I said to him is, you know, I wouldn't want to go on for another couple of years if I was just going to sit on my hands for a couple of years and, like you say, in tread water. I absolutely don't want to do that. I think what we do in Northamptonshire is different to what other areas are doing. I know that, you know, there are 4 fire services that come under PCCs now, but having been the only county council service to move across, we're doing far more in terms of, you know, innovation around things like enabling services than anybody else is doing, and we absolutely want to make sure that we can continue with that. Like you say, we've got a really big programme to do around ICT, and another big programme to do around the states, and lots and lots of work to do with stuff that falls out of the Grenfell Tower inquiry. And so what I see my role over the next couple of years really is, first, you know, continuing, you know, get through the COVID period, deliver on the enabling services, deliver on the new headquarters, get some investment in vehicles, equipment, ICT, like I say, move the service on, and then to rewrite the next strategic plan that will take us towards 2025. And I think that's going to be that key document. So we'll be writing that document, you know, this sort of time, well, in the summer, autumn of next year, for public consultation at the back end of next year, going into early 2022. And that will then set that blueprint towards 2025 effectively. And so that's what I want to be doing over the next couple of years. And in fact, when you start to look at all that work that needs to be done, 2 years doesn't actually sound like a very long time to get it all done, to be honest with you. So, but I want to make sure, I mean, for me, when I took the job in 2016, obviously in a fairly difficult set of circumstances, I wanted to be sure that when I finally do hang up the boots, is not only am I leaving it in a much, much better state, but also, like you say, is that we can actually point to us in Northamptonshire and say, look, you know, we're doing something different here to what anybody else is doing. And that might mean taking a few chances with a few things as well. And as a service, I think, you know, we're willing to do that. And, you know, and that's exactly the question that me and Steve, or the, you know, the discussion me and Stephen had early on, because I'm sure that, you know, if I said to Stephen, look, to be honest with you, I'm going to, you know, I'm thinking about retirement. I haven't really got anything else to do, to be honest with you. So I think I'll just stay another 2 years. I think he'd have, you know, he'd show me the door immediately, and it'd be quite right to do so. But no, you know, I'm really keen to, you know, complete the work that we've done, you know, so that we can point to Northamptonshire and, you know, move us into being outstanding. And I'm sure, you know, Nick Adley would say the same from policing. And so the 3 of us together, I think, are really keen to ensure that, you know, both Northamptonshire Police and Fire move ourselves into being outstanding services. And I'm really, really keen to do that.
Well, thank you, Darren. And I'm sure that we'll see if your enthusiasm ever drops. And you are very enthusiastic and passionate. And we appreciate that in your service. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Richard. And finally, could I call on Anita Shields, please. Can't see you. Where are you? Ah, there you are.
Good afternoon, Darren.
Hello.
Last question, so you don't have to, you can breathe a little bit now. Okay, what relationship do you think that you, the Chief Fire Officer, should have with the Police, Fire and Crime panel, given the respective roles of the panel and the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner?
Thanks for that, Anita. Nice to see you. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, I mean, first of all, obviously, my relationship with the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, you know, I think is in two parts, really. I think I alluded to earlier. There's the formal relationship between the Chief Fire Officer and the PFCC as the fire authority, as the legal body, and that we have to make sure that that remains on that sort of the statutory footing that it does, with all those proper processes and procedures in place for Stephen as the PFCC to hold me to account for the performance of the service, and that's really, really important. I think the personal relationship, as I said earlier, is really, really important as well. But I think it does go beyond that, and it's interesting actually, because I know, you know, I've met, I mean, some of you obviously before you become the Police, Fire and Crime panel. Obviously, you police and crime panel before that. And it's interesting about how we can engage yourselves in more of that. I know when we were part of the County Council, some of you were able to be engaged in some of the stuff that we do. And I'd be really keen, actually, to, you know, to sit down with some of you to look at some of the things that, you know, that you're doing, that you're interested in, to see how we, you know, we as a service can utilise some of that expertise within service, because, you know, you're all in the position that you're in because you've all got lots of experiences from other places, whether that's from being councillors or doing other things. And I'm sure, you know, some of that experience and some of that knowledge could be utilised for us. I mean, I know, for example, myself and Winston, I've had some conversations in the past about how, you know, how can we as a service attract, you know, more applicants from Black, Asian, minority ethnic communities, because it's not something that we've been able to do as a service. We've been very good at employing more women into the operational part of the service. You know, we've got a very high proportion for a fire service of women applicants, but not many applicants from, you know, Black, Asian, minority ethnic communities. And so, you know, utilising some of the expertise, you know, on the panel, that I think would be really, really good. Clearly, what I wouldn't want to do is I'm getting, I suppose, undermine the relationship is probably one of the better word that you have with the Commissioner, because obviously the relationship between the panel and the Commissioner, I think, are really, really important. But I do think that the more knowledge that the panel has around fire, what we do, how we operate, I think then gives you the opportunity then potentially to be able to, you know, input into that, if only in an informal way. So I think the relationship between myself and yourselves as the panel is an important one, because I think for you to be able to, you know, hold the Commissioner to account about the performance of the fire service, then it's always good for, you know, for people to understand the service as much as possible. So, you know, that offer is always there to the panel, you know, to be able to come into the service and learn what's going on effectively. So, you know, hopefully the relationship is a good one between us. But like I say, I wouldn't want to do anything that would then undermine the relationship between yourselves and the Commissioner, which is obviously a more statutory relationship.
Do you think, Darren, that this example of attending, the panel attending to this various workshop of open air display of the fire and rescue service provide enables the panel to understand a little bit better your, you know, your services?
Yeah, no, I think it does, and I think some of the, you know, the engagement days I think we've run in the past, and hopefully that, you know, we can do once we've got COVID out of the way and we're able to, you know, invite you into the service to see what we do. I think are really, really useful, to be honest with you, because, like I say, I think it's important that yourselves build your understanding of fire, so that you can be asking Stephen questions. And ultimately, while I'm employed by the Fire Authority, ultimately I'm a public servant. I work for the public. So, the more that public representatives affected, can have access to me, have access to the service, can ask questions, can come and see things for themselves, that would always be better, honestly, for you than only ever doing it through the formal route with regard to Stephen at the panel, or even me at the panel for that matter. So, and I know some of you have had those opportunities, and hopefully they've been useful. And again, I'm always willing for more of that to happen, to be honest with you, because the more people that know about the service and what we do, I think the better for all of us.
Thank you, Darren. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Darren. And in conversations with people from panels from around the country, I've been able to see what a shining example our Fire and Rescue Service is, and been able to promote that through things like the PCC review. But next, I'd just like to ask you, Darren, if you would like to clarify any answers that you've given or ask any questions of us. Is there anything you'd like more to say?
Yeah, no questions from me, to be honest with you. I think, the only thing to say is, like I say, we wouldn't be in the position we're in really had the pension scheme not really, created the situation that it's created. I'm really keen, to carry on for the next couple of years. Like I say, get us through the current crisis, and then deliver on all of those things that we want to deliver on. Effectively, finish the job, as it were, which really sort of follows on from Richard's point. To be honest with you, I absolutely would not be sitting here in front of you. I wouldn't have been asking Stephen about this if I wasn't absolutely committed to wanting to take the fire service forward for the public, in Northamptonshire. I mean, as you know, I've lived in Northamptonshire most of my life. All of my family is living in Northamptonshire, so I very much see Northamptonshire Fire Rescue Service as being my service. It's the service that I send out if my mum and dad, had an incident. So I want it to be the best it can possibly be, and I'm absolutely committed to doing everything I can over the next couple of years. So yeah, this isn't just about like I say, sitting on my hands for a couple of years, and so I don't, so I'm not getting under my wife's feet at home, as it were. You know what I mean? This is about me wanting to make sure that I'm delivering the best for the people in Northamptonshire.
Thank you very much indeed, Darren, and you'll be relieved to know that that's the end of the questioning. And thank you for all your explanations. It's been very, very interesting. I think, James, we're just at the point now to exclude the public and press. Am I right, or is there anything else? Is that okay? Yeah.
Oh, actually, and through you, Chair, of course, excluding the press and public will exclude the representatives from the Commissioner's office as well, and the Commissioner. So it would be counterproductive to do that if there were any questions that panel members had about the proposed appointment, the background to it, that then couldn't be answered because the Commissioner had left the meeting. So just with that caveat.
Is everyone happy that we move on to ask politely for Stephen and his staff, etc., to leave, and that we're content that we're ready to move on to the next stage? Andre.
Sorry, Madam Chairman. If we do exclude any members of the present panel, if you like, or certainly Commissioner, etc., what would be the reason for doing so? Because obviously we would then be excluding the public in terms of the YouTube link that we have. And do we have any questions that are effectively confidential and need to be discussed by the panel, Madam Chairman?
Well, I think we do move into private session to actually have our discussion, and then that isn't on YouTube. So that's why I'm saying if there are any questions we need to ask of Stephen and his staff and Darren, that we do so now. That it is normal customary then for us to exclude them, and obviously we let Stephen know by tomorrow what our results of our deliberations are.
Sorry, if I could add, Chair, yes, as you've highlighted, it's standard practice for all confirmation hearings for the panel's comments about its conclusion and the agreement of its final recommendations to be done in private session. That reflects the national guidance on confirmation hearings. What I was thinking of in highlighting the situation is so to turn to a previous example, when the panel did its last confirmation hearing for the appointment of the joint chief executive position for the Commissioner's office in December 2018, there were questions from the panel at that time about the proposed approach that the Commissioner was taking. They didn't relate to either of the candidates for the role or their capabilities or their appointability. So they were dealt with in public session before indeed the panel got to the point of asking questions of the candidates. Clearly, if there were any questions that the panel members thought they might wish to ask that were more indirectly related to the proposed appointment but would need to be answered by the Commissioner, then we would kind of need to go as far into them as possible to explore whether that needed to be dealt with in public or private session without getting into detail that should be dealt with in private session. Not necessarily the easiest situation to resolve. But essentially the approach taken, and as I say, that reflects guidance on confirmation hearings, is the discussion, comments about the appointability of the candidate and discussion specifically relating to the panel's conclusions about and recommendation on the proposed appointment should be dealt with in private session.
Okay, Councillor Jelly, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. From my perspective, I've read through all of the report, and Stephen's report early on explained the process and why we were here, and the procedure that we're going through. There's been proper legal advice and everything from the monitoring officer and the legal department. So I'm totally happy with the process and everything that we've done, and I don't think there's any reason to question that process at all.
No, not very much. Yeah, I quite agree. It follows the legislation on the COVID-19, and I've read thoroughly everything about the confirmation hearing. So I'm very happy. I don't have any more questions about the confirmation hearing.
Quite agree.
Chair, understood we were going to just confirm that with Edwina, her opinion.
Yes, okay. Edwina, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. But would you like to just make a comment there?
Just to be clear on what the question is.
On the sort of legality of the process and, that we're doing what we're supposed to.
Okay. Sorry, may I just seek clarification when you say the process? Are you talking about the process of the confirmation hearing today, or the process of the appointment?
Of the appointment and the approach that the Commission has taken to it.
Okay. The rules were relaxed recently in July this year by the government. So the Finance Act 2020 amended the Finance Act 2004 to enable a retiree to return to work on two conditions. One is that they've been employed within the COVID period, and the second is that the main or only reason why they've been employed is to deal with COVID issues. I'm sort of just paraphrasing, the effects of COVID. That Finance Act then removes the need for a break in employment. So having said that, it is perfectly lawful for the Commissioner to reappoint the chief fire officer back, basically for him to return to work. So there's a reappointment, as it were. With regard to the process that has been taken with regard with the employment, what I will say to that is there isn't really a legal duty on any employer to advertise the role, and employers, take whatever decisions they want with regard to advertising a position or making a position making it known, either internally or externally. However, having said that, as the fire service is a public authority, there ought to be transparency and openness in the procedure. So what I will say to that is, I'm sure perhaps the monitoring officer for the fire service will be able to answer these questions. I would imagine that policies have been considered in making the appointment. If there are legitimate business reasons, so normally with a public authority, if you don't comply with your procedure, it's perfectly lawful to depart from it if there are legitimate reasons to do that, legitimate business reason. And I'm being told that the legitimate business reason in this case, I mean, it's quite obvious from all the discussions, is there needs to be continuity because of COVID, the dire circumstances we find ourselves in the country. So from my point of view, I know I've said a lot, it's just to explain, I'm satisfied that the appointment and reappointments is lawful under the Finance Act 2020. There doesn't have to be a break in employment. A retiree can return back to work as long as the two caveats that I've mentioned, which is one, within the COVID period, this is within the COVID period, and secondly, if the main or only reason for reappointment is to deal with the fallout of COVID, which it has been said over and over again today, it's because there needs to be continuity during the COVID period. However, the second issue about the policies and the procedures, I believe that perhaps the Commissioner or Nikki might be able to respond to that.
Nikki, did you want to come in there and confirm about the procedures?
Yeah, just for purposes of clarity, basically the issue that we were seeking to resolve here was the ability to abate the pension of the Chief Fire Officer, and we are able to do that under normal circumstances, and that would require a break in service of 1 calendar month. The legislation was amended to reflect the priorities around COVID, and therefore because we do not want in any way to risk ending up in a situation where we have no Chief Fire Officer in Northamptonshire in the middle of a national pandemic, we have enacted those procedures to ensure that we can have continuity of service in our Chief Fire Officer during that time, whilst enabling his pension to be abated. It is perfectly lawful under the Finance Act. It has been checked by our legal team, who have also trawled the regulations. It does not, therefore, because the purpose of what we were seeking to do is to abate pension, it doesn't actually fall within employment policies as such, because the break in service is purely for the purposes of abating pension. It is not actually a technical vacancy in that sense. It is, however, our intention at an appropriate point in the future, because Darren obviously will retire, to at that point we would then default to our employment policies and properly advertise the vacancy both internally and externally, and actively encourage as wide a pool of potential candidates to apply as possible.
Thank you very much. Okay, right. If nobody else has got any comments, then are we okay to move on, James?
Yeah, could you move the formal advice,
Okay,
please?
I will move the formal advice that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that if the public were present, it would be likely that exempt information under Part 1, Paragraph 1 of the Schedule 12A to the Act, the descriptions will be disclosed to them. And I thank everybody for their attendance that is now leaving us as a result of that exclusion. And we will notify you of our discussions as soon as possible.
And that resolution is agreed
Is that resolution agreed with everybody?
Yes, agreed.
Yep.
Yes.
All
Agreed.
confirmed. Thank you very much. Okay.
Chairman, I'll just stop the live stream.